Okay, our topic was ableism in education.
So, ableism is a form of discrimination that affects people with disabilities. Some examples are those with physical impairments like paraplegics and quadriplegics, those with sight and hearing impairments, or those that suffer from mental illness. Ableism is harmful because undervaluing disabled people leads to less concern for the issues they face in our abled society. Without actively acknowledging their importance and value, we wouldn't have necessary aids such as ramps, canes, or sensory toys. We need aids in order to ensure differently abled people feel included and are able to contribute to society as a whole.
Couple definitions that go along with our project. Ableism is discrimination toward a person or people with disabilities while simultaneously prevailing able-bodied. So, and it's analogous to terms such as racism, sexism, and ageism. IEP, which stands for Individualized Education Program, is a legally binding document that specifies an instructional plan for a school-age or preschool child with a disability. It can be developed jointly by the children's parents and entertainment professionals and possibly the child as well. We have two different acts from different times. IDEA 1975, which stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It specifies procedures for individuals to appeal for services specified in the act. And the 1991 provides money to the states to improve their educational offerings for these children. Some background information about ableism. Disability is once seen as something that needed to be eliminated from society. In a school setting, from an ableist perspective, the de-evaluation of disability returns in societal attitudes that uncritically assert that it's better for a child to walk than roll or reprint than braille. Basically, it was in school, it is preferable for students with a disability to do the same things in the same manner as non-disabled kids. Ableist assumptions create a negative impact on students and their education and can range anywhere from the deaf, blind, and those with learning disabilities.
So for our contemporary example, we wanted to talk about how clear it is the prevalence of ableism when we're looking at the coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic. To begin with, people with disabilities, like the elderly, are at a higher risk of developing complications from COVID and often require physical assistance, which puts them at an even higher risk. This makes it risky for people with disabilities to return to work or attempt to live normally as this pandemic rages on. And although some insist that everyone must return to work, this dangerous sentiment can cause trouble for people with disabilities. This idea is described by Justin Glynn in his article, COVID-19, Shining a Light on Ableism. He states, warnings that economic lockdown will do more damage than the virus and demands for open borders often carry an implicit, sometimes explicit, subtext that some will die for the good of the rest, and that the useless eaters, as the Nazis described us, should be sacrificed. This shows how little concern there is for people with disabilities impacted by this virus. Along with this, students with disabilities are being hit especially hard by this virus. Due to COVID, classes have been moved online, and many students are confined to their homes. This leads to a lack of structure and daily routine. These characteristics promote a sense of discipline and safety in children, which is important for psychological and emotional development. Adjusting routines like this can be greatly detrimental to children with physical or mental disabilities. Children with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD in particular, can feel more anxious, upset, and restless because of this lack of routine. Along with this, many online classes aren't compatible with assistive technology necessary for those with visual or hearing impairments. This affects their learning and puts them at a disadvantage compared to their other classmates. The social distancing aspect of online learning is especially detrimental to those with disabilities like ASD, because social distancing keeps them from developing essential social skills and interacting with their peers.
Now, throughout all this, the government has created the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, and according to an article by David Educaton, rights aren't enough to change the structural inequality and widespread ableist attitudes and beliefs. It is revealed that there are deeply entrenched inequalities that are held up by discriminatory ableist beliefs. There's a weak enforcement in that the right laws alone, at least as we know them, are not enough to deal with the kinds of inequalities people with disabilities are experiencing. Rights remain platitudes when there aren't enough social welfare, health, and educational supports to make those rights meaningful. And there's definitely a need for the better home and community care. Also, the 1999 Olmsted case institutionalized disabled people discriminatory and illegal. They made institutionalizing disabled people discriminatory and illegal if they should live in their communities with adequate supports. Adequate supports seriously are lacking, and despite the right to live free from restrictive and isolating environments, home care is among the first targeted for cuts when threats to Medicaid funding are made. In addition, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 was sponsored by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and the plan shall be updated annually and shall be reviewed annually and approved by the Commission. If the Commission determines, after consultation with the committee, that such plan provides sufficient assurances, procedures, and commitments to provide adequate hiring, placement, and advancement opportunities for those individuals with disabilities. One resolution that we have decided is that inclusion is key and that everything should be understood and that everyone should watch what they say around other people. For example, things that the government should do as a solution to ableism is to allow for a more reliable accessibility for those with disabilities in smaller businesses, such as easily accessible ramps or elevators. Also, for those who have mental health disabilities, more money should be put into institutions to assist those with mental stability, such as counselors or psychiatrists. And then, in addition, there should be laws that require certain issues to be talked about in classes to educate the younger generations on the issues with ableism and the background of how we can avoid ableism in the future.